Welcome. My name is Craig Mertens. I'm Director of Product Education for Inktavo, and we are the parent company of InkSoft, Printavo, GraphicsFlow, Sign Tracker, Clarity in the UK. So this is part 6 of InkSoft Academy. This is probably my favorite class to teach, creating differentiation through graphics in the InkSoft Designer. The title is not super snappy, but the subject matter is. And this is a topic that I feel very strongly about. Graphics drive everything. And my background is in the graphics side of things all the way back to the days when I was working in our college spiritware store with my mom at the U Shop in Tempe every Saturday all through high school. And when I'd come home for summer in college, me working in my dad's wholesale organization, Desert Sportswear, being kind of pest in the art department. And as a manufacturer's rep in the decorated apparel business, helping customers develop custom graphics, then turning that into a software company, Digital Art Solutions. And it was interesting being at the impression show. I realized that this was the 30th impression show I've been to. And in 1992, the company Smart Designs kicked off. And that was my dad taking the artwork from our decorated apparel business, turning it into clip art, putting it on 182 floppy disks and shipping it in a Huggies diaper box. And that's how clip art and design templates got started in the decorated apparel industry. He was the early pioneer. It didn't exist before my dad invented it. So I feel like I'm somewhat uniquely qualified to teach this class. Also, working with Digital Art Solutions and being the industry leader for many years on design templates and graphics tools specific to the industry, as well as clip art and fonts and all that fun stuff. And you'll get to see the fruits of that labor today because you'll see what Digital Art Solutions evolved into, which was GraphicsFlow, and you'll see that on the webinar today. So a little bit of background on myself. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we're going to get right into it. So the class title today is Creating Differentiation Through Graphics and the InkSoft Designer. First thing I want to talk about is kind of our goals and objectives, what we're going to be doing here today, using graphics to differentiate and drive online store sales. Everything spins around graphics, and we're going to get into the reasons for that. Reducing design workload with reusable production-ready art. You're doing small orders. You have a lot of art time spent doing that. If you take an honest look at yourself, sometimes you could be losing money on that. So we're going to showcase some faster, more productive ways of doing that, and also focus a little bit about giving your customers some self-service opportunities. Deploying GraphicsFlow designs into InkSoft stores and the InkSoft Designer. I'm going to show you some really neat techniques where you can kind of connect the two platforms and make it, it's not a 1 + 1 = 2. It's like a 1 + 1 = 7 or 8 kind of a situation. And expanding beyond logos with lifestyle and retail inspired graphics. And if you've been on classes with me before, you understand that I'm kind of a big proponent of not just putting logos on stuff. And we're going to talk about some techniques to kind of grow your business and differentiate yourself from the people that do put logos on stuff. We want that business too, but we want all the extra business that's tied into graphics. So why graphics matter for online store sales? So the graphic is what's driving the purchasing decision. Customers, when they're buying, let's say, a t-shirt or a cap, they're not buying a Richardson 112. They're not buying a Gildan 5000. They're buying the graphic that's on those products, and the conduit to that graphic is the substrate. Whether it's a sign or a banner or a promotional product, the substrate is just the carrier for the graphic. And if you have better graphics, your products are going to sell more. And so when you have those strong visuals in the graphics and people land on your store, you're only going to keep them there for a little while before they move on. If they don't see a graphic that catches their eye, they're probably going to move on to the next shop. And so it's super important to have really inspiring, cool looking graphics and examples of the work that you do on your main website to showcase your work. But it's also important if you're creating online stores for your customers. Artwork accelerates approvals. So if you get hung up in the artwork phase when the customer's trying to figure out what they want, and it creates a lot of friction, and it also creates a big delay between the time we start that conversation about ordering till we get it completed. And one of the things that you can absolutely do is use web stores or even your GraphicsFlow Art Portal as just kind of a deal escalator, something that allows you to, give the customer a tool that helps them to select a graphic or allows you to get into a collaborative situation. So there's not all this back and forth. And honestly, one of the toughest things about our industry, it's always been, people go to other sites or Custom Ink or wherever, and they screen capture something and send it to you. And that's actually more work than creating something from scratch. Having to recreate something, especially if you don't know the provenance of the artwork and there's copyright issues involved. So we really ultimately want to give customers a better option than that. I think a lot of times our clients default to that because that's all they know and that's the only option they have. But when you have graphics implemented properly into your online stores, and specifically like an InkSoft store with a online designer or maybe an embedded GraphicsFlow Art Portal, you're able to give your customers a lot of options, and it's easier to hang on to them, and it's a lot easier to get new ones. Designs increase order value. If you have better graphics, you can sell your products for more. And that also relates to processes as well. And let's roll out an example here. Let's take, for example, I have a 80/20 hooded sweatshirt, and I put a two-color kind of boring screen print on it with a weathered effect. It's solid, it sells, it's a easy thing to move, it's classic, $40. But now I put the school initials in a two-color layered applique with maybe just script text and embroidery underneath it with the mascot name, and it says DHS embroidered script text mascot. What is the cost of that hoodie now? That hoodie just went to, from a retail point of view, that hoodie just went to $65 easily with that applique. And how much did your production costs go up? Well, tool's cheap, thread's cheap, you got your sewing time on your machine, but maybe your cost only went up $2 or $3. And here is all that extra money that you're pocketing as a result of that. And what's driving that? The graphic, but also the production process is driving that. And so creating that natural upsell is very good for your business, but it also, I think it really serves your customers well. They tend to be happier and they tend to stick around. If they learn to rely on you as the creative source within their, merch appetite, so to speak, they're not going anywhere. They're hooked to you and your graphics. And it makes it tough for them to jump ship. So connecting graphics to retail trends, this is critically important. And I want to kind of explain a couple of processes that, in terms of art development, that we are very much believers in and that we practice that. The genesis of this concept came from me working in my mom's retail store and working in our family decorated apparel business in the collegiate sportswear. And let me explain what I mean. If you were a manufacturer's rep and you came into my mom's store and you were trying to sell her products, and your products with your graphics were sitting on the sale rack, it was going to be very difficult for you to get a new order because my mom's going to point over at the sale rack and said, "Hey, listen, what you sold me the last time, that graphic's not working. Didn't sell. You told me it was the greatest thing ever and didn't sell." When I was a manufacturer's rep, I was very careful the first time I would sell a customer in the collegiate sportswear world. A lot of that was college bookstores and a lot of big department stores, folks like Foot Locker, JCPenney Corporation, Barnes& Noble, who, by the way, runs college bookstores. I was very careful to select graphics that were going to drive retail sales. We were very blessed when I would go in to meet with the customer. I had these great art books that our art department put together. I didn't have a GraphicsFlow Art Portal or a digital tool like you're seeing on the screen right now, but I had all these great printouts. We would localize those printouts to that particular school, and we'd go in and meet with them. And I had a rolling rack that I'd drive in there and literally drive it in there. And I have maybe 150 different examples of garments. And I even had a little booklet that had Pelons printed out. And so we were always starting with the customer graphics first. And I'd always steer a first-time customer into something that I know was going to buy some real estate on their store floor. What do I mean by that? If I put a really good graphic into that store and it was selling through, that wasn't going anywhere. I was occupying space in that store. And every time I go in there, I get a reorder. And then what would happen is they gain confidence in me that I'm putting in really good reselling graphics. They give me more space. And pretty soon, I've got a pretty good corner of space in there. I remember with both the Air Force Academy Visitor Center and Colorado Springs and the University of Colorado bookstore, I had to go in there and work on football weekends because I wanted to make sure that my goods were getting restocked as they were selling out. And that was because we put really good graphics in it. So why do I mention that? I can't stress enough how important having good graphics is in terms of driving your sales. And the best way to leverage that is a little bit of R&D, rip off and duplicate. So what does that mean? See what's out in the marketplace. Get inspired. Talk to people. You're in a retail store, you're over at the Gap, right? You're talking to one of the clerks. Hey, what's your best-selling t-shirt? Oh, okay. Wow, I didn't see that coming. Do some market research. So how does that play into, what we do today as part of Inktavo and, let's say, GraphicsFlow? We do the same thing. We have t-shirt graphic designers. These are specialized graphic designers that focus on creating graphics for t-shirts. Our team of artists that does all the graphics for GraphicsFlow every month, they're t-shirt designers. They're folks that do work for, big freelance jobs for folks like Fanatics or Nordstrom Corporation, or another one is Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio. So they're very tuned to retail graphic trends and colors and what's going on in the marketplace and fonts and things like that. So when we design into those trends so that you don't necessarily have to do the research, because you have a tool where somebody else that's very professional that knows what they're doing does that research. And so if you do a little R&D and you copy the retail fashion trends, not the exact graphics, but the trends and what's going on in the marketplace, that's a really easy way to deliver products your customers are going to sell, that are going to move. And we don't want to make it, experimental. Let's try this. If you do the let's try this and it doesn't work, that ends up falling back on you, and that creates a lot of harm in the relationship. I'll admit, when I was a manufacturer's rep, every once in a while I'd sell something to a customer, and I'd go in there and it wasn't doing well, and I probably took that a little bit personally, but I felt it was like my obligation as a partner with them to really steer them into things that I knew that were going to do well. And steering into more popular retail looks is pretty easy. And those are things like, vintage looks. You cannot go wrong with the weathered effect. You cannot go wrong with the collegiate design. Absolutely cannot go wrong with patches. Patches work universally, from that patch and crest look on a water bottle to Richardson 112 hat to full chest applique on a hooded sweatshirt to just a simple screen print, and maybe add a little overlay to it or make it some, more earth tone colors. So aligning the graphics that you're going to use to populate the products in your stores with retail is super important. And, if your graphics are outdated, that will drive business to your competitors. People expect to see top-notch graphics when they go into a store, and I'll be the first to admit, I am absolutely positively a graphics snob. I am. And I think a lot of us in the industry that have been around the decorated apparel industry are probably the same way. We can look at a graphic and eye it up and say, yeah, that's cool. That would probably sell, or that would probably make a customer happy. And on the converse side of that, I can also look at things and go, tried that, didn't work. Customer wasn't too happy. So it's like anything else in life. Do more of what works, do less of what doesn't. And I feel like leveraging that creative ability and the ability to really sit down with your customers and work through a graphics collaboration process is one of the very best things you can do to tie people to you and keep them around. And it's also a great way to get new customers. And let me explain how that worked in practicality. When I was a manufacturer's rep, what we would do is I would get ahead of my meetings with a college bookstore. I would get with our art department, and they would do a bunch of mock-ups, and they would take like this Inktavo graphic here, and they would mock it up for Colorado State or University of Wyoming in their school colors with their mascot. So when I went in to meet with the buyer, they weren't having to look at a Colorado State design on a shirt and try to connect the dots to what it would look like in the University of Wyoming. I would show them that, and making that graphic real, engage them in a collaborative process where all of a sudden they fell in love with the graphic first. And then it was just a matter of figuring out what we were going to put it on. That's it. They love the graphics first. And I am a huge proponent of graphics first when you're working with customers, whether it's, trying to line up graphics for an online store or trying to put together a bulk ordering situation. Start with the graphics. If in the implied contract, and sometimes you have to spell it out, is if you like what you see, buy it from me. You do have to have that upfront contract with the customer that basically lets them know that, you're not doing this artwork for free, that this is part of the value that you're offering them. And if they want to use your graphics, they have to buy them from you. They can't take your graphics and take them over to somebody else. And I promise you this, if you don't spell that out to a customer, at some point in your career as a apparel decoration professional, somebody's going to do that to you. They're going to take this graphic that you put your heart and soul into, and they're going to shop it over to somebody else. And you're going to go on their website and you go, hey, that's my graphic. And that doesn't feel very good. So I think having that conversation up front with the customer, being really positive about it and letting them know that, hey, these are the ground rules, is really important, because not everybody has the same level of business ethics as you do. Some folks have very flexible business ethics. And so sometimes you just have to spell it out. So I want to talk a little bit about lifestyle graphics and then beyond logos on stuff. If you look at any corporation, And even the shirt I'm wearing today, just the logo for Inktavo. It does have a weather effect on it. Looks pretty cool. But you flip the shirt around, it's got this very cool rock and roll kind of crust band shirt kind of a look. And the idea is we want to create in the corporate graphic side of things, we want to create merchandise that people would wear on the weekend, not something that, it's like, oh, I got to wear my corporate shirt. That's what you want to do. You want to create that lifestyle type graphic because that creates business on top of the logo wear. And I say this to promotional products distributors particularly, and a lot of them honestly don't get it. They're so just programmed for logos on stuff that the concept of actually taking the company name and building a cool collegiate graphic with some classic laurel leaves around it with the football in the middle of it tied to the school colors of the local school, like in this case, University of North Carolina. Like that concept is absolutely foreign to them. And what that means to you is as an apparel decorator, where you're very forward thinking about graphics, is you have an art department or you work with artists. Let me tell you, that gives you a massive, massive advantage. And it's not that hard. I mean, you can take collegiate looks, resort wear looks. You can go online, do a little bit of research. If you look at like walk into you're in Gatlinburg, right? And you walk into any t-shirt shop in there and ask them what their top sellers are. Guarantee you're going to see something that looks like what's on the screen here, but they're going to tell you what their top sellers are because they think you're going to buy a shirt and maybe take a couple clandestine photos. And that'll give you some great inspiration of something that you can take and spin off into a corporate look. The idea here is to get what we call plus business. We want that logos on the stuff business. They're boring uniforms, but we want business on top of that. And you can use that to populate a pro shop for a corporation. Pro shop is where employees go and they take money out of their own pocket and buy merch. If employees are coming out of their own pocket to buy merch in the company pro shop, that profit's going to you. You can do that and you don't even have to do a revenue share. You can do a revenue share. You could sell them those products in bulk too, but it's a little bit like printing money, and that I think is one of the very best use cases for an InkSoft store is creating a company pro shop. Blend branding with style. Incorporate the company names into retail-inspired designs customers want to wear. You can, with permission of the company, you can take an element of their logo or something that's completely unrelated. We kind of went with the football theme here. We didn't even use the corporate font. If you are going to use the corporate logo and the corporate font within a theme, I think using the same font throughout the theme is probably going to keep the branding and standards people happier than mixing fonts. The human cost of creating graphics from scratch. Customer asked me this question where Impressions were talking about how their art department was structured. And they asked me a question, well, how many artists did you guys have when you had Desert Sportswear? And this is a young gentleman that is going to work for his dad's sportswear company. And they had this massive archive of artwork going back, I guess, almost 40 years, kind of like we had at Digital Art Solutions. A lot of our artwork for our clip art and even to this day in graphics so came from our screen printing business. And he just asked me how many graphic designers you had. And I was kind of do math on it. And I was like, we had like at least 6 people doing creative. And then we had something like a 14 to 16 full-time production people that are just taking that Colville design there and changing it to a different high school or a different college, swapping the mascot out. And we had to do that because we had 30 sales reps and 6,000 customers. We were processing just a crazy amount of graphics. And every penny we saved on processing the graphic was going towards the bottom line of the company. So if you're doing highly customized artwork, especially for small quantity orders, you could be losing money, very easily be losing money. And so there's always this kind of, it's a scale, right? On one side of the scale is creativity, which is expensive. And on the other side of the scale is boring, which is cheap, right? So what you ultimately want is really creative graphics that are cheap to make. And you know how you do that? You use stock graphics. And we're going to talk about that a little bit here too. So art department, generally speaking, in most shops, might be some exceptions. Usually it's a bottleneck because art requires human capital. It requires a very special skill set. It's time consuming. AI art doesn't solve for everything. One of the challenges with AI art is the production readiness side of things. So can help, but it's not always the end solution. And so if you're trying to develop a custom graphic concept for an event or a program and it's stuck in the art department, not only is that costing the company money, but it's also creating a delay in getting that quote approved and getting the order over the line so we can start production. So kind of removing some of that friction, so to speak, around, art production has got a lot of value to you. And, if you do art right, you can, and you scale with, especially with stock designs, you can do more with fewer staff members. And let's math this out a little bit. Back in the Desert Sports Tour days, if we had 30 reps and 6,000 customers, and on average, when we do a new graphics portfolio for a season, we usually have 40 or 50 graphics custom. And we'd go in with printed samples and the customer would sort through those graphics and pick things out. So let's say an average customer did, we'll just say 4 graphics. Okay. So 4 times 6,000. Now you got 24,000 pieces of artwork you have to create. Can you imagine? And the only reason that was possible is we had everything templatized. So that Colville design that you see there, that was a template. They'd open it up in Adobe Illustrator, change the text, swap out we'd probably already had the mascot done. If we didn't have the mascot, we'd vectorize it and mix match, change the colors, and we do it very quickly, which is interesting because that concept eventually became Smart Designer, which is our very well-known and popular add-on software for CorelDRAW that is still available to this day as an option to a GraphicsFlow plan. Now, if you're in Adobe Illustrator or using FlexiSign or CADLink, you can do substantially the same thing as Smart Designer could do in CorelDRAW. You can do it on your phone or your tablet or your Mac or your Windows computer using the customizer in GraphicsFlow, which you guys are going to see a little bit. So, having the ability to produce artwork quickly and efficiently, whether you're doing it in-house or maybe using an outsourced graphics team, is going to have a massive impact on your bottom line, but also your ability to scale. So using GraphicsFlow to deploy graphics faster. So the original vision of this concept of stock designs, it was my dad's idea many years ago. And he said, hey, listen, we need to create a tool that will enable anybody that's a non-designer to create cool graphics. So you don't have to have this huge barrier of training, and that anybody can go and create a cool graphic. And that was really the genesis of the idea for what was our Smart Designer software. And it took off. It was I would say it's healthy to say it was a phenomenon in the industry. People really grasped the idea and really supported the idea because they didn't have to be dependent on an artist to do artwork. You can take, that highly customized art, that, maybe that's justified by bigger orders or reorder potential and have your art department do it. But all the lower level stuff, you can do it all using templates and you can do it using the Smart Designer software. And so when we decided to create GraphicsFlow, we're like, man, we have to have something that can do substantially the same thing, but we need to give people the ability to do it on their phone or their tablet or their Mac or the Windows, because frankly, from my experience, like the whole what graphics program you choose thing is very tribal. Like if I go to a CorelDRAW user and say, hey, I'm an Illustrator user, they're going to be like, whoa, Illustrator is so complicated, blah, blah, blah. Or if I go to a Illustrator user and I mention CorelDRAW, they're going to be, oh, that's an amateur software. Well, neither of those two things are true. The programs are substantially similar and more or less do the same thing. They're just flavors, in my opinion. Now you can spin in like a Canva there, and then Canva's like a consumer level program, but just because it's consumer level doesn't mean you can't create cool things. From a production point of view, creates some issues because a lot of it is in vector. So you have to deal with that. But the bottom line is this: if you can just do it on your phone and it literally takes just a couple minutes, I think you're the winner because you have the lowest production art costs. And it was funny, being at the show and Impressions, which is quite interesting. I didn't really have a computer set up to demo. And, customers kept asking me about like GraphicsFlow stuff. And I just had my phone and I was just sitting there on my phone. I'd pull up a template, edit it real quick, and then I'd get their email and I'd send it over to them and they'd get it on their phone and they'd sign off on an art approval. And I don't think my dad ever would have had the vision that we'd be doing this on our phones at some point. It's just crazy. So, and the other aspect of a tool like GraphicsFlow is the artwork's production ready. I'll let you guys in a little secret. The specs in the GraphicsFlow artwork, how it's built, how it's constructed, the instructions we give the graphic designers, how it's layered, how the colors we choose, those all came from our screen printing business. Those are all the desert sportswear specs that we used back in the 80s and early 90s because we had to clear the way and make it really easy for our production artists to swap those templates out. They had to know that that design only had 4 colors in it, and it was already Pantone color separated. They needed to know that everything was grouped, so if they selected the mascot alligator over there in that graphic, that wasn't gonna select his glasses and leave the rest of him, that it was all grouped together. The concept behind production readiness that we use in our screen printing business is the same spec we use today in GraphicsFlow. And the reason we do that is so that there's no surprises when you go to production, that, you're not having to remove semi-transparent pixels from for your direct to film transfer because your supplier is saying, "Hey, I can't print this." You can just print it. It's all set up for production readiness. And that's a huge benefit to you. I think it's one of the biggest benefits of GraphicsFlow compared to like an AI tool that, at least as of today, those AI, tools are not built to create production ready files. There's always going to be some level of pre-press. And, if you just vectorize stuff, there's always, some kind of distortion or drama that's associated with that. And so having files that you just print is pretty awesome. Faster deployment of artwork means faster sales. You can get deals over the line quicker, and you can launch stores quicker. And more importantly, because you can bust out this artwork so quickly, you can create a pitch store in advance of a meeting with the customer where you just go in and populate a store with some, basic products and some customized graphics. And the first impression they have of you is clicking on a link and seeing a pre-built store with 3 or 4 graphics with their name on it and their colors, and using that as a discussion point because now they're taking you seriously. Can you imagine doing that? We have customers that build their whole business around it. Part of their sales process, they build a store and populate it with graphics before they even have an appointment with the customer because they found taking the time to do that has such a high conversion percentage, but it also distances them from their competitors. Can you imagine being like a promotional products distributor and rolling in there? Not picking on them, but I'm just saying rolling in there as a promotional products distributor with a catalog that has placeholder graphics on a little tiny little thumbnails and say, "Hey man, we can put your graphic on this," versus somebody that's in advance of the meeting, sends you an email, says, "Hey, Bob, in advance of our meeting, I put together this whole store to kind of demonstrate what we can do for you." Now, bear in mind the product curation and the graphics aren't that, that's just a starting point to showcase the idea. We'll develop all those graphics and curate all those products for you. And what time are we meeting next week? Wow. What a difference, right? So you guys have the tools to do that. If you're running GraphicsFlow and you're running InkSoft, you have all the tools to do that. So we're going to kind of dip into the platforms a little bit, but I want to lay a foundation here. GraphicsFlow supplies the artwork. So curated, customizable graphics power stores and portals. So you pick the style of graphic for that vertical market. Maybe it's schools, team sports. Maybe it's rodeo. Maybe it's beach themes. You curate the artwork. You customize it based on what the customer is looking, and then you can put it in your portal as a category, or you can put it into an art approval, send it to the customer, and they're looking at very customized artwork. The InkSoft Designer has a personalization function, and that personalization function allows me to go in and create one design, Eagles forever, put live text in it that says insert sport, and every group, every school, every activity, every band member, orchestra, jazz club, football, basketball, baseball, lacrosse, badminton, whatever key club, whatever group or organization that wants to get merch created can go into that Eagles Forever design and change the text in there, put their group in there. So what does that mean? It means you don't have to populate 28 different stores for each market. You can still do that. You can put, 28 stores for each group on your website if you want to, but you could just do one store and have them personalize it. And you can set up rules like minimum order quantity, 24 or 36. You can set up price breaks. You can do couponing programs or promo codes or gift certificates, all that stuff. But you don't have to create all those variations of the graphic. You just create one graphic with a name drop. And which to me is very interesting because name drops are something we did back in the desert sportswear days. See a common theme there where some of these ideas kind of evolved over the years. So together, they streamline the workflow. So from design selection to production ready output, that whole workflow is smooth because when they design that Eagles Forever design, The render file for that is a vector graphic. And so when they download that, your art team downloads that, they can scale it up or down. They can recolor it if they have to color correct it because they have a scalable vector graphic, and it's going to be an SVG format, PDF, and EPS format. So they're going to have all of the graphical flexibility to do whatever they want to, alter it or get it exactly the way you need it for production because it's vector, which is awesome. So engaging customers through graphics. So we're going to take a dip into an art portal, and we'll actually process a graphic through the portal so you can see what I'm talking about. The idea behind the portal is this is a collaboration tool where customers can go to get ideas. That's it. That's the whole process. And when you collaborate with customers on artwork, it builds loyalty. It shows them that you're serious, that you're more than just a person that's printing for them, that you're their partner, that you're their, assisting them with colors and branding and ideas and marketing. And if you've gone to some of the other classes, we talked about this concept of, having a marketing package as being part of your store package. Meaning when I'm setting up somebody for an online store, we're going to have a whole little marketing package. It's going to have a trade show pop-up with a QR code on it, driving people to the store. It's going to have a postcard, maybe 1,000 postcards with the QR code, driving folks to the store with some photos and virtual samples of the products that are on there. It's going to include coordinating with their marketing department to make sure they have all the copy and the posting schedule and graphics for Instagram and Facebook. It's going to mean drafting the email and programming the email sequence with whatever their blast email program is, or maybe even sending it out on their behalf. So part of this process is, in terms of, not just creating these customized graphics, but linking that into a whole marketing program. So the customization of the graphics is part of the marketing program, which is part of the value, which freezes your competitors out, which also opens doors for you. Because if you make it easy for people to buy from you, not only do you get more customers, but you keep the competitors out. Yeah, it's fact. And so I think, it's human nature. I think you look at, you take a deep, hard look at yourself and your business and what you're doing. And sometimes you go, man, I should be doing more of that. I just don't have the time to do that. This process would not be scalable if you didn't have a tool like GraphicsFlow. There's no way you could do it. If you had to go in and, spend 15 or 20 minutes monkeying around in Illustrator, CorelDRAW, customizing all these graphics, I don't think it would be practical for you to just be populating out stores as pitch stores for customers. I don't think it would be practical, in my opinion. But if the front office person or a salesperson can do that and only takes a minute, that's different. So it's got a pretty dramatic difference in terms of production time and speed to market. So putting it all into practice, design once, sell many times. If you do it right, you can take this seniors design, it has tigers in it, you put a different mascot, rinse and repeat, you're done. It's just a program. And that's exactly what we did with our decorated apparel business. We just had these stock graphics and we changed out the names and the colors and the mascots and the crests, and boom, you're done. Super fast, super easy. Meet customers where they buy. You can blend that self-service, kind of self-guided design experience with stock things. Every customer will have a different preference. Some people, like if I'm talking to a lacrosse coach, the last thing in the world the lacrosse coach wants to do is dip into some online designer tool and design a shirt. Now, the kids, on the other hand, that play on the team, they might want to do that. So being able to find a kind of a middle ground where you can meet the customer where their buying habits are and what they prefer to do, I think it's really smart. And if you have the InkSoft Designer, you can absolutely do that. And graphics become a growth strategy. Part of the way that you grow your business, so part of the way that you grow your business is through graphics and not just decoration. You're differentiating yourself from your competition. All right. So let's get out of here and let me take you up into the internet, and I'm going to take you over to my GraphicsFlow Art Portal. So this is craigmertens.com. I own this URL. Didn't really know what I'm going to do with it. Maybe someday when I retire, I'll do something fun with it. But for me, it was just a great place to park my art portal from my demo account for GraphicsFlow. This was a great place to park it. What you have over here, when you look at this design right here, is I went into my art portal in GraphicsFlow and I created some of my own designs and added these to the portal. These are all editable designs. Remember that Inktavo design? That came from this. So the first thing the customer is landing on is some of my designs that I localize, and maybe I put all my local schools in here and some local businesses, but the customer still has the ability to go in here and go to featured designs and just pull up all the designs, design ideas, and pull up all the designs and search for a design. Now, in my portal, I have it arranged so that um, artwork that's related to sports is the first thing that you see. And I've turned a few categories on, turned a few categories off. By default, they're all on. And maybe you're not a pickleball person. You don't want to show any pickleball graphics. Maybe you had a bad experience with pickleball. You could go in and turn all the pickleball clip art and graphics off in your portal. So there you go. But maybe you just needed a pickleball graphic. And so I could just type in pickle and then pull up a pickleball graphic, right? So this is creating that self-service experience for the customer. And the way they would submit a graphic is through a design request. And so if they went in here and they had, something, they had a camp that was coming up and they wanted to do a camp graphic, they could go and click on camp. And I find these two little bears very ironic because back in the days of Desert Sportswear, we did a whole Christmas program and we put in all the major department stores. That was nothing but these cute little fun teddy bears, full circle, right? So if I wanted to, go in and pick one of these designs out and send it in for customization, like maybe I want to do one of these old school 70 designs, which is kind of fun. What I could do as an end user, I could just click on this and I could say, hey, can you change this to whatever? I'll say youth league here, right? And 2026. And then where it says Faith and Family Church, Lutsen, Minnesota, there's a ski resort there. We're going to go over here and say Youngstown, YMCA, change colors. Can I do patriotic colors, right? Sure, why not? So they're just putting their notes in there. And then what's going to happen, you're going to see this little button that says Submit Design. And then the person can go in and fill this out. And so I'm just going to fill it out. And we're going to go over here and I'm going to put my email address in there and phone number. And then project, I need this February 11th. So click that, hit apply. And then who's your sales rep? It's Roberto. All right. If maybe I had source artwork that was the school logo or the corporate logo, I could upload that. And then I'm just going to say I'm not a robot and I'm going to submit my design request. So a couple things that have just happened here. So number one, some emails have been triggered. So me as the end user, I'm going to get an email that says, hey, thanks for submitting the art request. As a GraphicsFlow user, I'm going to go into my GraphicsFlow account and I'm going to go over here. I've got a design request and it just came in. And let's see what's going on here. So I haven't assigned it to anybody, but I'm going to assign it to Craig over here. So Craig just got pinged. It says, hey, there's a design request assigned to you. I can put any notes I want to put in here. Customer is slow pay, 100% prepaid, right? Nobody's ever had one of those people. So we'll save that. That's going to also send in, that's an internal note. Here's the customer. I can edit that information if I want to. Here's all the basic information. And then here's the design. So let's go and edit that. This is all I got to do. Just go in here and click on this. And we'll just say customize. And the design is going to pop up. And then if I don't want the weather effect on it, no big deal. Turn it off. And let's change it. So we're going to go over here, change that to 26. And then I think we said youth league. Enter. And then over here, Youngstown, YMCA. There we go. And we don't need Lutsen anymore, so let's turn that off. And let's make the YMCA just a little bit bigger. And maybe move it down a little bit. The whole idea behind GraphicsFlow was just to make it possible so anybody could do this. And one of the decisions we made is we didn't want to turn it into a full-fledged, complete, like Canva level, Illustrator, CorelDRAW level graphics tool. If we do that, it adds a lot of complexity and there's a learning curve. I could have just taken this design and just downloaded it if I wanted to, as a PDF file or as a CDR or an AI file and just edit it in the graphics program of my choice. I could have done that. And I think in some cases it makes sense to do this. I talked to a customer at the trade show and he says, I think I'm struggling with GraphicsFlow. I want to be able to do this and that and add and delete. Well, you can do that, but you're a graphic designer. Just download the Illustrator file You don't have to edit in the customizer. The customizer is for your salesperson that's out in the field doing this on their phone. He's like, oh, okay, that makes more sense now. So we've got the basic copy in there, looking good. And let's change up some of these colors now. So once we've got that all set up, the colors are displayed, and I think we wanted to kind of go for a red, white, and blue look, if I'm not mistaken. So let's change these colors. So that red, not crazy about that red. Let's do something a little bit more poppin'. So we're going to go for more of a poppin' red. And then this right here, this is going to be more like a royalish blue, navy, kind of a tweener. And then where this orange is, if I was going to put this on gray, I think I can go with white. I'm going to take this orange right here. I am going to make it white, but then I'm going to go tweak the graphic a little bit. Okay. And we're going to go over here to where it says youth, and I'm definitely going to go in and make that navy. So see, there's the colors in the design right there. Much better. And then where the league is, I'm going to go in and make that red. And then Youngstown YMCA, we'll make it navy. So I've got every bit of latitude that I need to customize this graphic, but I don't have to have any like special skills. I don't have to know, you don't have to be like an Illustrator user. I can just kind of do what I want. I think that beige color there around that box, I think I make it gray. But if I make it gray, I'm going to add another color in here to the graphic. So honestly, white. Yeah, boom. There we go. So we got this created, right? And so we're going to save it. So we're going to go over here and say save, and we'll just call it Youth League 26. I could put it in a folder, but I'm just going to stick it in my main folder. And then I've saved it, and then let's just bounce it back to the customer. So to bounce it back to my customer, I'm just going to say add to art approval, and we'll create a art approval, right? Got to spell that right. So we'll go and add that file to this art approval, and then we'll bounce it back to the customer. So we'll go in here and let's change the background color to gray because we decided that was going to be gray, and we'll do kind of more of an ash gray in there. Or maybe we'll go dark. Ooh, yeah, let's do that. Let's go darker. And I could put a virtual sample in there. If I brought that into the InkSoft Designer and did a mock-up, I can screen grab that and dump that in there if I wanted to. But in order to send this to the customer, all I need to do is just hit the old sharing link and then put the customer's email in there, put my email back in there. And I'm going to give myself the ability to comment or approve, or I could send it out with just a comment or can view only link if I want to. So we'll send that invite out, or I could put it in an email just by copying that link. So let's go back to my email inbox. There it is, and view it. Looking great. I can reject it, approve it. If I approve it, looks awesome. Then I got to click through the disclaimer. Remember we talked about customers taking art to other people? This little disclaimer that we added, all designs represented in this art approval are the intellectual property of Craig's creations. You're not permitted to take the artwork, recreate to other vendors. Nice, huh? Well, also a little disclaimer that says colors may vary. And so once I clicked on that and approved it, a couple pretty cool things are going on right now. Number one, in this art approval, it's logged all that. So it says, hey, Craig opened the email, Craig signed on it, and Craig approved it. Craig submitted it. So I know all of that. If the customer comes back later and they said, hey, that was never approved, hey, no big deal. We just click on it and say, hey, it was approved by Craig on January 30th at 2026, all that. So, GraphicsFlow has this massive library of artwork that's just sitting here waiting to populate your InkSoft stores. And if you're using Printavo, it's sitting there waiting to populate your orders and quotes in Printavo. And if you're not using our platforms at all, it's sitting there waiting for it to populate into your business, into your e-commerce platform. And also you got all the clip art in here. And one of the things that's really cool about it is you can color the clip art and then you can actually save that clip art into your own custom clip art. So use this mascot all the time and it's always got blue in it instead of, let's say, purple. There, I'm going to save this as my purple tiger or blue tiger. We'll call it navy tiger, right? and that's saved so I can pull that up anytime I want. And you can go in and curate these little designs in here as, so I'm gonna change the original design. It created a copy, but you can go in and favorite all these designs. You can add them to your portal. So if you go over here and you want to add them to your featured designs in your portal, you can do all of that. So how does this relate to InkSoft? Let's come back to my East Eagles booster store. Every graphic in this store came from GraphicsFlow. That came from GraphicsFlow. This banner came from GraphicsFlow. This banner was a graduation banner that came from GraphicsFlow. I just changed the text on it. All the art in this mock-up came from GraphicsFlow. These are all GraphicsFlow designs, and all I did is I created the design in GraphicsFlow. I I muted the text that I wanted to change, and then I imported a PDF with the vector artwork into the InkSoft Designer in my main store. So I was in my main store for my account, and I went into my main store, the designer in my main store, and I imported the PDF file, and then I went in and just typed in insert sport and put it in the right place. And I think the only colors I made, yeah, I just have a standard collegiate color palette that I created. That's not all of the colors, it's just the common collegiate ones that I put in this store. And so customer can come in here and get a quote, hey, we need to get volleyball shirts done. They can go to next step and, get a quote. And in this store, I have it set up. So if you do one, you're going to get a POD price, but if you do 100, you're going to get a bulk price. And I could also make the store pricing just inclusive of decoration, because it's actually getting the colors out of the graphic to quote this. It knows it's a 3-color graphic, and it's quoting it based on my 3-color screen printing grid that I had set up in InkSoft. But we could just have it say $25 if we wanted to, which probably not a bad way to do it. So this store's got all kinds of fun things, and it's got name drops for player names and numbers. It's got a name drop for an embroidery patch. Bear in mind, this text is not live embroidery text. It's just simulated embroidery. And the way we handle that is we put a little nudge right here that says, click on cap to customize the sport or group. The lettering of the finished cap will be embroidered. Dropped in laser etched patches in here. These are all graphics from GraphicsFlow. Grad banners. This is just a graphic from GraphicsFlow. Super easy to do. Doing these grad banners is as close as you're going to get to printing money. Super easy, super profitable. I went in here in this store and we created some drinkware. Yeah, here we go. So laser etched drinkware. And this store, we also embedded the GraphicsFlow Art Portal into the store. Super easy. Let me show you how to do that real quick because it's not hard. So we went and embedded that in the store. So now you got the art portal embedded there. They can submit design requests. This particular portal is going to my GraphicsFlow account, my personal one. So people do find this website and go and click around. I get these little art requests, random art requests every once in a while. And usually coming from one of the sales reps that's demoing out of here. So that's interesting. So let's go back into InkSoft and let's go back into the back end real quick in this store. And I'm just going to go down to store admin right here. And then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to scroll down. And in here, see where it says activate scripts right here. This is a little setting. If you wanted to put like a store chatbot in, I have a chatbot program for the store, so you can go activate the scripts. But all I had to do for that page, super easy, is all I had to do is go into the page and just go to GraphicsFlow and grab the embed code. We can do that real quick. So I'm going to go over here to Art Portal. Manage settings. I'm going to grab the embed code right here and copy it. And then I'll just show you how easy it is to drop this into a store. Just go over here and just say, add a component. And the component is going to be a content block. And I'm going to go to code view. And I'm going to paste that in there. And there it is. That's how easy it is to embed the portal. And then you could create a promo bar or CTA that describes it, which is exactly what I did in this store. So couple things recapping. Super easy to take GraphicsFlow artwork, use your designer within your main store, make the text editable. You have to replace the text with live text in InkSoft. That's the only thing you need to do. When you save it, it's going to land in your administrator created designs. And when you do that, what you can do is you can assign it to a category and drop it into stores. So once it's inside of a category, you can drop it into a store. So you could say that's those 6 designs go into those 6 stores. And by the way, this is the new navigation for InkSoft. You have the new navigation panel, which everybody seems to really enjoy, and I really like too. But these are admin designs that somebody's just saved in there that I need to go in and push into a store. I don't have them assigned to any stores. And then I can go in here and create my own categories and do all that too. So a lot of times in InkSoft, people think you have to go into this feature to create your designs that you want to be editable in InkSoft. You don't have to. Just create it in your main store, add the designer to your main store, and create it in your main store. They'll always go into what we call admin created. So, and then here's where you go in and set up categories for your templates. And you can create a category. In here, I think I have a category that's just East. I know I do. East College Prep. It's actually a category. And then the East Boosters in there. That's category 2. I just have a category just for East Boosters, which is I have one for Central. So I can put specific designs into that specific store. So last thing I was talk about, like, how is this different than like custom ink? Okay. Let's talk about that for a second, because I think anybody that's been in the business for a while has gotten that screen grab from custom ink, right? We've all been there. Well, I'll let you guys be the judge. You can go to Custom Ink's website and you can look at their templates. I would say that the 99.7462% of the people that look at the artwork in Custom Ink and then look at the artwork in GraphicsFlow are going to prefer the GraphicsFlow artwork. It's just at a different level. Okay. But what we're doing is we're not asking the customer to go and pick out a template and design it themselves. What we're doing is we're saying, hey, listen, we already designed it for you. All you're going to do is just go and tweak it. I can still go in here. Like I've got curated designs in here. I can still go over here and go to add art and browse design ideas. And I created custom designs just for this school. I can still go and do that, but I don't have to go and start from scratch. And this is a huge difference. I've got, 90% of this or more done versus having to go in here and go to add art and then just go to the general design ideas for schools and go in here and, comb through all these designs, which these are just the standard InkSoft designs that are built in here. Some of them are pretty good, actually. That came from GraphicsFlow. I always forgot that we added GraphicsFlow designs to InkSoft. And we did that, I think we did that about 3 years ago. But the only thing is when you work with your CSM, you have to go in and have them activate them within your store. They don't activate automatically. And that's only available in an InkSoft Unlimited plan. So there's great videos on our website, but if you work with your CSM, they can add those GraphicsFlow designs. And that's where that came from. So, but I still have to go in here and I have to change this to East, right? So I still have to do that and do, some tweaking and stuff versus, having kind of done it for the customer automatically. And remember that template? I locked everything, the original template. I locked everything except for the one part they could change. So they can't get in trouble. They can get in trouble over here. If they're not, 'cause you're squeezing and going in and tweaking the graphics. So, when you lock everything down, it only allows them to change the one part. That one graphic I did, it's just a single piece. So if you go over here and we'll do a select all and we'll delete all this and we'll go back to one of those other graphics, it's just one piece with one part that's can be changed. So it's literally, and this is all the stuff I saved. So the only part on this that can be changed is one part. This is one big piece, can't be changed. This part can. And that's a byproduct of the way the artwork's created. When I save it as a PDF out of the GraphicsFlow platform and I import it into the space, it'll come in as one unified vector group. And then I just go in and type in the insert sport here and boom, you're done. So I think in terms of comparing the experience of name dropping, in InkSoft Designer versus having to go and like design something from scratch in the designer or design something from scratch with custom ink. I feel like the best use case for the InkSoft Designer in terms of creating a convenient self-service buying experience for your customer, create some templates. It doesn't take that long. GraphicsFlow it doesn't take long to, if I wanted to go in and take those East Eagles designs and convert them to central boosters with a, I think there's 12 of them in there and convert them into central boosters. It ain't gonna take me very long. Maybe it's gonna take me a minute to design, and I could probably do the whole thing under a half an hour, and then it's gonna take me another half an hour to load it in InkSoft. I'm done, an hour's worth of time, and just think of all the value you have behind that. So it's kind of the perfect little marriage. GraphicsFlow plus InkSoft, it truly is 1 plus 1 equals 7, 8, or maybe even 9. So not quite 11, but it's really incrementally more of a value. So that's why when we talk to like new InkSoft users and I say, hey, are you using GraphicsFlow? And they say no. So, well, let me talk about GraphicsFlow. And, pretty much probably 80, 90% of the time, they're like, oh, wow, this is really amazing. What do I need to do? Well, guess what? We have a whole special bundling program. If you have InkSoft Unlimited, we have a whole bundling program for you. Save a huge amount of money on your GraphicsFlow plan. So thank you so much for attending today. One of the things I'd like to invite all of you to do is go to the inksoft.com website, scroll all the way down to the bottom and hit that little button for YouTube and like and subscribe. And if you do that, anytime we publish recordings for these webinars, or if we're going in and publishing a new training video, you'll get a little notification that'll let you know. Thank you again for attending InkSoft Academy, and we will see you on the next class.